So these ones are not necessarily going to be something that you can use on the field. These are more just nice little decorative props that you'll be able to use. This is one that I made a long time ago. It is just a lot of hot glue. You can use chopsticks, you can use wooden dowels. It's just acrylic paint, a lot of hot glue, and some patience. And I'll show a better picture of that whenever I switch over to my other camera. So yeah, if you guys have any questions with any of this stuff, please raise a hand in the chat so that whoever is helping me out with keeping an eye on questions can let me know. If I go too fast, say something, just general stuff. So I'm actually going to start switching over to my other camera so that you guys can actually see what I'm working on. Okay, here we go.
Give me just a moment to get that one spotlighted.
That is fine.
There you go.
Oh, I don't want to mute that one. Mute that one because I have the other one going. Okay, so this is a much better lit up version of this. This one was just done using a dry brush technique for the gold because I like dry brush working with acrylic because I'm one of those weirdos. So you can use anything that you have. You can use, if you really feel like it, if you have an old beat up paintbrush, I've got like old beat up paintbrushes. You can even just strip out the back end of those and the brushes and you can do it for this. Anything really works for these, so long as it's a wooden base for the most part, because the metal can get too hot whenever you're working with the hot glue. So, some different supplies that you guys can want. Some rhinestones for decorative purposes. I did send out a materials list, I think, to Calandra. She posted it for me. Got those. You've got these lovely glass beads that you can get at any dollar store or Home Depot. They just use them mainly for decorative stuff in the florals. Assortment of paints. I like metallic stuff for wands, but that is me. And then I use a bag has seen better days, but just hot glue. I like to use the all temperature one because it helps that low temperature one dries a little bit faster or cools a little bit faster. That way you're able to work with it and do your layers a little bit better as you go. You do want to make sure that your space is prepared. I don't have a whole lot of room, but I have some printer paper that was lying around to help with that, to protect my surface, because I don't want my surface to wind up looking like this with all the little hot glue bits and paint everywhere. And of course, paper towels to help you with cleanup. I have some brushes pre-soaking for me to paint with later, so I have some wet brushes and a lot of hot glue. You're going to go through a lot of hot glue. Okay, so first thing you want to kind of figure out, I think we're going to use this chopstick. Yeah, we'll start off with this one because we can make a couple of these, I think, within the time allotted. Okay, so you want to figure out where you want your handle to be, and just kind of eyeball it. You don't have to mark it down in case you want to do something clear and not paint your hot glue. Just to kind of figure out how you want to hold it, and then make a mental note of where you want that to be, because you're going to have your top part of the wand can be different from the bottom part to designate your handle. So what I'm actually going to do, fish out my hot glue stick, pick that back up, see where I wanted it. I'm actually going to put a little bead, hot glue, right here. This is a really easy, fun little weekend craft that you can do. If you have kiddos, you'll want them to be supervised because you are working with a hot implement. And then, since I know I'm going to build up my handle, I want to work on my handle first. And just kind of try to figure out what design you want to do with it. think we're going to do something kind of basic on this one. And just do some rings here. You want to kind of keep it moving just a little bit. And if you mess it up, it's okay, because you can always take it back off while it's still hot. Just find a toothpick or another piece of wood, just something to scrape it off. If all else fails, you can always change your design to become something more organic. It's not incredibly hard as much as it is just time consuming and making sure you have your hands, not hands, what's the word I'm looking for? A steady hand, there we go, if you're wanting to do a lot of precise detail work. So like this, I'm like, I don't really like how that's turning out. I might wind up doing that up toward the top. So I'm gonna just fill in these sections, hot glue, and kind of move it around. If you get a good blob, you can just kind of move it around with your nozzle. And hopefully some of you guys had the materials and stuff to where you guys can play along with this and have your own little handy dandy fancy wand. Because they are actually a lot of fun and they're really relaxing to make whenever you get into it. Oh, that actually is a good idea.
I do not own a hot glue gun, but I may have to get one.
Yeah, they're really useful. Because I don't really use them for a whole lot, but except for maybe like minor repairs to stuff. But whenever it comes to this type of crafting, they're really useful. They make really pretty things, especially as wax seal stuff. You can duplicate hot glue and use it for wax seal stamping too, which is a lot of fun. That's one of my big things that I'll eventually get into to teach with you guys out here, how to do that. Just kind of smoothing that over because I see the bubbles and I don't want the bubbles.
Yes,
We
would very much love for you to teach a class on making seals.
Yeah. Once I develop the formula on how to make my own wax, I'm going to share that too. So wax seal stamps are my favorite. And whenever you get to this back end, you want to make sure that's nice and covered, because that's going to be where we're going to put some embellishments on. Because you want to work kind of quick, but not super quick. You want to kind of keep it rotating to keep your glue nice and even on here. You have to hold it upside down and it'll do a gravity pull down, which can actually cause some really cool effects, which I can show you on another piece that I did as a practice one before this earlier. Yeah, so I want to keep that there. I'm actually going to use this dowel to kind of hold that one up here while that dries. Nope, while you dry. There. Because you can kind of see on this one that I was using, which we might work on just depending on how time goes. You can see how I just kind of dropped the glue in large sections and just kind of let it dribble down the sides to give it this melted candle wax looking effect on it. And these are some of the embellishments I was talking about you can put on with the rhinestones. The good thing with the rhinestones, you can just scratch the paint off once it's dried if you have a implement that can get in there. Just don't want to use like a razor blade because that'll scratch your material. And try to make sure this is okay. These two are good. And it's to figure out what we want to do up here at the top. No, I've stuck it to myself. As with anything with hot glue, you might burn yourself. This is just, you are warned. I'm just going to add a little bit more glue up there on the top. I'm going to rotate that one. And if you get the little stringy bits, that's okay, especially if you want to use that as a subtle design element. Go for it. Yeah. Much like with working with the gesso from Eleanor's class, it's a lot of watching stuff dry. And unfortunately, the hair dryer cannot help you with hot glue drying. So that's just a patience game. So this one, I think we're just going to keep pretty basic and not do too terribly much up here at the top. But I do want to do some, I'm going to do a little bead here. And I'm just going to kind of rotate it around up here, squeezing a little bit everywhere, just to kind of give a pseudo bark effect. Kind of, sort of, not really. Just some texture that's not the chopstick. Yeah, because you can use the chopsticks from if you go out to eat at any place that has them, so like your local Chinese food restaurant, noodle bars, sushi place, and they have those little free chopsticks things. Usually, if you ask them, they'll let you have a few just for you to have. If not, just don't use the ones that you get from them and use them for this. Or if they just include it in the bag and you don't intend to use it, this is a good way to recycle them for other purpose. One rain we did at Skywatch, we actually had one similar to those for the different elements. And while you can't carry it on the field, you can carry the ride up for it on the field, as long as your monarch's okay with it, and as long as and that works for your magic item if you have those, because it's a lot of fun. Okay, try and make sure I don't have any wood really exposed here. You kind of see that texture. But let me not show you my poor dirty hands. Yeah. So these can be as easy or as complicated as you want. That's one of the beauties of doing these. I'm going to do another layer of glue, but now I'm going to do a layer over the entire part of the handle here to build up on what we've already done. Try not to recreate that other that I've already done earlier, because I like doing organic shapes a lot. You can always just move it around with your nozzle. So I'm trying to give it that stair-step look. I don't think it's going to work out that way. Okay. Oop. Already out of glue on that glue stick. And if ever you guys have questions or you want to see me do something specific while I'm doing that, please put something in the chat and let me know. With this, it's something that's very easy to be accommodating to what anybody wants to see, or a specific type of design, or what can you achieve with these sort of things. Yeah.
How long does it generally take for the glue to dry?
Not too terribly long. Depends on how thick you do it. Like some of these huge, thick little globules, it might take it a minute or three. Like this up here is already dried. It's a little tacky, but it's already dry from where I applied it. But that's also because I'm using a all temperature type. If you use an actual just plain low temperature hot glue, it should dry a lot faster, my brain says, but this is a all temperature, so it's good for any level, like hot, cold, um, hot glue guns. So it's got like a midpoint for the cool down. You get all your spider webbing, and I like to wrap it back around. And I'm going to dangle it like this to give it a gravity fall for that base right there. Move my arm out of there. You can kind of manipulate the glue a little bit with the gravity by just kind of rotating it around. And I think that'll about do it for the handle on this one. We'll move on to embellishments. I was trying to see if this would be big enough. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that works. Okay. Messed up all my work. That's okay. We'll fix it in a minute. This is just how it goes. This is part of the art process. Okay. What I did is I just stuck a stone on there. If you want that, the gold, I don't know if you can see the gold on there, to shine through on the bottom, you do want to paint the bottom of your glass stone. If I can become unstuck from my project, that'd be great. Let me reapply some glue there, even that back out. It's okay if they aren't perfect. They are happy accidents. I'm going to channel my inner Bob Ross here for a second. They're happy accidents that just add to the chaotic beauty that is your individual wand. There will be no two that are alike. They are all wonderful. Okay. Now let me not stick my hand on it this time. So with these glass beads, they're clear on the bottom. So if you don't paint them, it'll just show your hot glue and your wood on the bottom of the wand. I'm trying to make sure I'm in frame here. So usually what you want to do, we're going to do that with one in just a second here. Wanted to make sure all that was in place. Okay, we're good. We're good. So we're going to get one of our little glass beads, and we are going to pick a color. I'm going to pick green. Make sure it's shaken up really good, because there's nothing worse than separated out paint whenever you're trying to paint. And I'm going to get one of my brushes. And you're going to want to paint the bottom of your glass stone, whatever color you want your gem to be. You might have to do a few layers, but you just gently apply the paint to the bottom here. If you need to do small taps, just do small taps. We're going to set that down, and we're going to let that dry. I'm not going to attack my phone. And that goes back in the paint water. My lovely, lovely paint water. Okay, so while that's drying, we can do some more work on this one now, because this should be, yeah, you can see where that bubble happened because of the gravity fall, but we can just kind of gently smoosh it down, because there's that nice little happy midpoint with the glue where it's not going to be attached to you, but you can still mold it and sculpt it a bit. Okay. So we can work on painting this with our first layer. I think what I want to do with this one, let's do a purple. I'm also a bad artist. I don't have a palette. So a lot of the times I just wash the brush out really well and then dip my brush directly into the paint pot because I'm a bad human. Don't do that. Try to get a paint palette if you have one. All of mine have just been sacrificed to other uses here lately. Okay. So you want to make sure your brush is nice and loaded up, or at least one side of it is loaded up. And then we'll just start applying the paint. And you'll see that it's not hitting all of the grooves there. Sure. Turn down my lighting just a little bit. Maybe that'll help you guys see it. Yeah, if you guys can't see anything, please let me know so I can fix it on my end. Because of the way the camera is situated, I can't necessarily see what angle you guys are seeing. And you're going to go back the other way. You're going to hit your little grooves where the paint missed. There's way too much paint on my brush, but that is okay. It'll all get used. And you just keep on going. You can make the wands be something for personal flair. If you're wanting it to show for a certain element or a specific spell, I like to try to theme the wand around that. Right there. And the really fun thing about what this does as far as the texture on your wand, maybe, will let you see all the different shading and everything else on there. So I'm going to move to a darker purple for the handle. Let's see, did our not dry just yet on that one. Still not dry here in a second. I'll probably use my hair dryer for it. There is a way to you can build up a whole bunch of these. Just for the ones that you actually will use on the field have to be foam, if I remember correctly, which is, you can't really do a lot of this with foam. Okay. And we'll do nice dark purple for down here. While that's drying, since I'm going to do this in a different color, I'm going to hold it by there. You don't want to put your hand in wet paint. Says the person who put their hands in hot glue. You want to be careful around your rhinestone. I'm probably going to go back and put some more hot glue around the base of that just to kind of build it up a little bit more. No paint left behind. Okay. You're probably going to have to do a few layers of each coat just in case, depending on how opaque the paint you're using is. I prefer to use acrylic paints because they dry really fast, and they last a good bit, and they are very cost effective. Everything that I've got here has been purchased either at Joann's, Hobby Lobby, or Michael's. Um, the trifecta of the crafting world. Um, and if you want to leave some of those blank spaces that expose the wood, go for it. Because this is your creation. Okay, and that's dry up here now. At least part of it's dry. So I can touch it. Okay. And then, does anybody have any questions so far? Okay.
It looks pretty.
Thank you.
It could be, a little biased about the color.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. And then I like having at least two dowel rods or something to prop your piece up so it's not sitting on the table itself. Okay, so now that's dry. You can go back to this. Playing on. So you can see that's a really nice, lovely little green shade. But if we were to put it directly up against the hot glue, it's not gonna be as vibrant. So what you want to do is if it's you want to have it as either a black or a white base, depending on if it's a light color or a dark color. That green falls in the darker colors. So we're going to paint the next layer of that. You can either do another layer of green just to really thicken that up, make sure it's a nice solid color, or we can go ahead and do black. For the sake of time, I'm going to just do a layer of black underneath it, just to do that. Now, okay, so same song, different verse. You're just going to kind of gently, because this one it's dry, so you don't have to worry as much, but you do kind of want to have a lighter hand than whenever you were applying the green, and you don't want to overdo where your green is too terribly much, because otherwise that black is going to show through more than the green will on the edges. Now we're just going to set that down to dry, and that'll give us a nice opaque background for whenever we apply it to this other piece that's over here. That's picked it up by the paint. Okay, so I'm actually going to, where's that at? Like, so for this one, I paint this one. You can see all the rhinestones I did. Same thing as you doing with this. You just apply some hot glue and you apply your different types of decorations. You can use rocks, you can use rhinestones, glass stones, thread, ribbon, any sort of knickknacks that you want, because this is your wand. You get to decide what goes in on this and make it all nice and pretty. Okay, I'm gonna see. Where's that brush? There's a big brush. Okay. I'm gonna take some gold. No, I'm not gonna do the gold yet because I need to do another layer of those purples. That's right. Layers. Layers are your friend. I think that goes for the majority of painting. Is layers are your friend. And you can even mix and match the colors you want, especially if you're doing a dry brush technique, to accentuate out what colors you've got going on. So I'm actually going to do that on this bottom section whenever it's dry up top here. And this time I'm just doing a upward stroke. You want to make sure your top's nice and done there. Back in the water. You always want to make sure that your brushes are nice and clean before you use them because you don't want them to get damaged. You don't want to intermix too much of your paints, especially if you do it the way I do where you don't use a paint palette. Okay, so we're going back in on this crocus. Get that in there. Boop. A little bit more, please. Boop, too much. Boop. Perfect. Okay. So that acrylic paint, since it's in such thin layers, is drying out really well up top. You can kind of tell whenever it's shiny and not shiny. So I'm just kind of going in and helping fill out some of these spots where it looks super thin. Because I don't want it to be thin. I don't want to show a lot of that clear on this piece. You can even go through later if you have like one of these bigger wooden dowels and okay, that's glue. Drill a hole in the back of it and just make sure you keep the glue out of that. You might have to drill through the hot glue and the wood. Just keep an idea of where your wood is to run leather cording through it for you to be able to wear on your belt or however you choose to wear your fancy accessories. Back in the paint water with you. Okay, perfect. So I'm actually going to add this stone to the back of this. I know it doesn't really match the scheme. It'll match. I haven't come up with a finished color scheme yet. So we're going to build up on the back of this. Normally you wouldn't want to paint over, put hot glue over where you've already got paint, but it'll be okay because that paint can create a layer for that glue to not really want to attach. But it should be okay because it's not a lot of paint right there, and I'm going to use a good chunk right here. Yeah, you can actually see where it's starting to cause the glue underneath it to melt away. Okay, so once you've got your dollop there, letting that gravity help me out, we are going to smoosh. That is the technical term, is to smoosh it onto the back here. And we'll build that up in a minute. We're just going to let that sit. Actually, going to prop that up right there next to the paint water. Hope it stand up right. Maybe. Okay. No. This is why dedicated craft spaces are good, kids. Okay. So I'm actually going to do. So I'm going to get a dry brush this time because I don't want it to. I want the effect that it's going to give with the wet brush. I mean, the dry brush versus the wet brush. If you haven't ever painted dry brush versus wet brush before, let me see. Quit it. I'll prop that up back here. That TV will be okay. Okay. Clean out my brush. And for a wet brush, you want it to have been soaking for at least a minute or so to actually get your bristles nice and saturated for the wet brush. So say for this gold here, for a wet brush, you get kind of a nice, even wetter consistency, for lack of a better term here. Whereas with a dry brush, very old dry brush, it's you can see more of the strokes are, you can see the bristles more defined. Let me move all this. On there. You can see the wet one is nice and smooth. That dry brush, you can see a lot more of the edges of your bristles. At least that's what I have learned. I am not a professionally trained artist. This is just things I have observed in my time out in the wild doing arts and crafts. Okay. So back in water. Get my brush back in there. And I'm going to very lightly just kind of kiss the wand with that brush. Because if you do it too much, like I just did right there, you can see it kind of got all up in your grooves. You don't want it to hit all of your grooves because this is all just for the accent. So you're really just trying to hit all of the knobbies that are coming off of your wand here. We'll actually do a few different colors here just to kind of play with it. You can always just overbrush to thin it out, and it'll give it that sheer look. Okay, I'll let that one stay dry, and I'll wash that one in a minute because I want my thin brush real quick. Way too much paint, but that is okay. And then we're gonna actually, no, I'm not gonna do it with that one. Much like with your other one, should have thought of that before I did this. Actually, it's working out. You'll want to do an opaque color underneath anywhere where you're going to do a more sheer color. This gold is a very sheer color. So normally you'd want to do underbase to it, like a white or a yellow, even a black if you're wanting it to be a dark looking color where the black shines through. I'm just going to go through. I'm going to add a little bit more hot glue to this bottom part. Just a little. Let that dry. Set it over here to dry. Cut the can. And we're going to move on to this one. And much like we did with that gold, because I'm feeling adventurous with colors today, we're going to do a little bit of green on this one to tie in that gemstone we put on the back end of it. Any thoughts, questions, suggestions, comments so far?
More glitter?
More glitter. I have glitter, dude. We can do this.
Bring it
Let's go.
on. Let's do this thing.
Okay. So let me get this here. We're just kind of slapping it on.
So I would think your gold one, without doing the solid color underneath it, might shimmer a little bit in the light.
It does a little bit, but it's really sheer. So if you look at it under certain light, like I'm doing, it's one of those that I don't know if it's passing through on the camera very well. But if I hold it in certain places, that gold is almost invisible. You can't see it until the light hits it a certain way because it is such a fine sheer color.
Does it work to paint your dowel rod first?
You can do that, but you run the risk of your paint being eaten by your hot glue and your hot glue not wanting to sit on the dowel correctly because of the paint. Just it'll peel up off the wood. If that makes sense. It's that weird layer. It's not fusing to the wood, it's fusing to the paint that's on top of the wood. Okay. And I'll be right back. I'm going to go grab some glitter at the request of some people's. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay. Ask and you shall receive. Okay, so the big thing whenever you're going to use glitter on these, because you're going to have to seal them, I tend to, you can use like clear Plastidip, you can use any sort of wood sealer. I sometimes use polyacrylic. You just have to be very careful with the polyacrylic. I'm not going to be showing you guys how to do that today because I do not have a way to fumigate, or not fumigate, I don't have a way to ventilate my room appropriately, and I would rather not be inhaling fumes of polyacrylic because I think that would be bad form to get high off of your craft supplies in any capacity. So anytime you're working with anything that does fumes, please make sure you are in a well ventilated area. Okay. So we can do a nice thick layer of glue up here. That way we give our glitter a place to stick. You want it to be on a wet surface. Okay. Always make sure you have a very good little area to catch all of your glitter, because otherwise it is going to be a bad time. You just want to do a little bit. Rotate. A little bit more glitter. We're just going to make sure that's. Yeah, because whenever you've got the glitter, you'll definitely want to go over this with a clear coat of something. There you go, and it's all nice and shiny.
We have 10 minutes left.
Okay, so we're going to go back to this one. Okay, so is there anything that anybody wants me to go over specifically on these? Because I know that this is a very much so watching paint dry type process. Okay. You can kind of see here where we created those ridges earlier. It's given that nice bumpy look. These are really simple to make. They are just a little time intensive if you so choose to make them time intensive. but they're a lot of fun and they add a lot of immersion to the game if you have different type of fun tools and toys to play with on these. So yeah, you'll just wait for everything to dry, and then once this dries, you'll go on it with that clear sealant spray and call it good. And yeah, there we go. You can see there and there. I think you can see that okay. How that black undercoat helps with making the colors stand out. Because if we just did a clear, you're just going to get a magnified version of what's underneath that glass bead, which you don't necessarily want. And you can paint the entire bead, you can just paint part of it. But otherwise, yeah, these are just two wands. And as you can see, I basically made 1.5 of them in about the 45 minutes that we had together. So yeah, and you can make them as thick as you want, as thin as you want, big as you want. They're just happy little fun toys to play with. Yeah. So is there any other questions or comments? Because I think that just about wraps us up for this part.
Let me go ahead and stop recording then.